Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Um, so today we're going to be reading from Surah 64, Mutual Blaming. Let's all seek refuge in God from Satan the rejected. Auzubillahi minash shaitanir rajim. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Surah 64, Mutual Blaming. Al-Taghabun. In the name of God, most gracious, most merciful. Glorifying God is everything in the heavens and everything on earth. To him belongs all kingship, and to him belongs all praise, and he's omnipotent. He's the one who created you. Then among you there is the disbeliever and the believer. God is fully aware of everything you do. He created the heavens and the earth for a specific purpose, designed you and perfected your design. Then to him is the final destiny. And the footnote for 64:3 says, "We are in this world due to God's immense mercy. The most gracious has given us a chance to redeem ourselves." See the introduction and Appendix 7. Okay, so I mean, so this surah really, is a very short, very concise, but it's really packed with a lot of things for us to ponder upon. To start with, it talks about the fact that everything in the heavens and the earth is glorifying God, and all the kingship, all the praise belongs to God, and He's omnipotent. As humans, we like to be praised, and our egos, want praise and recognition and things like that. But in reality, you know, all praise belongs to God because He's the one who's the creator of all things, and everything that we know of in this world, whatever we think it might be, whether it's beautiful flowers or trees or something amazing, something that really blows your mind, it's all everything is created by God. You look at any marvels in the heavens or the earth, or any invention or anything that you admire, something beautiful, something that smells good or tastes good, anything you can think of that you have ever appreciated or had praise for is created by God. Without God, obviously, there's nothing, and they all glorify God. But as God says, we do not understand their glorification. But we are the only people, on this earth that have the free will to glorify or not to glorify God. But all other creatures, including our bodies, our body is a submitter. It's part of the earth. The earth is a submitter. So they're all glorifying God night and day. But we have the choice to glorify Him or not. But everything else is, continuously praising God. And when you really think about that, it would put you in a different mindset, than the way we normally are. God is the one who created us, as it says in verse 2. Then, there is the believer and the disbeliever. And God created the heavens and the earth for a very specific purpose, as it says in the footnote. You can look at the introduction in Appendix 7, but it really talks about why we came down here on this earth. And obviously, that's a question that everybody ponders upon at some point in their lives. But for most people, it carries a little importance when they are, indulged in the worldly life. But really, when you think about it, the whole purpose of our coming to this world is to be tested, and to go to our ultimate destiny, which is going to be either heaven or hell, based on our convictions and our lives, the way we live it. And you can read more about it in Appendix 7 and the food in the high society that actually led us, into this world. Um, Also very, also an important thing that I would mention here is that the verse is very specific about the creation of the heavens and the earth for a very specific purpose. But then it also talks about he designed you and perfected your design. Then to him is a final destiny, right? So I mean this has like so many things in it to think about. I mean, God has perfected our design. He has created us. I mean, not only has He designed us, but He has designed us to a point of perfection. So any imperfection we see in ourselves, physically, is a result of our own shortcomings. Like if you have, say, health problems and things like that. I mean, those are, based on your choices and your actions in life, whether it's based on your deeds or other worldly lifestyle choices, etc. But God, as far as God is concerned, he made us in the best design, the perfect design, and we cannot make it any better through any means. I mean, He's the one who has created this design to its perfection. Obviously, that is for a very specific purpose, as we know. So, God has put that in mind. I mean, obviously, because we're supposed to be bound to this earth, we don't have wings to fly around. Although, like you would think, well, it's perfect design. Why can't we fly? I mean, it's perfect based on the needs that we have in this world and based on the things that we're supposed to be doing and being tested for. I mean, otherwise, God could create a body, for example, that would never get sick, or it would be indestructible or something like that. But as far as the worldly test goes, I mean, God has created humans weak, and we're put in this garment in order to be tested to see whether we worship God under all circumstances or not. um, and then it says that He knows everything in the heavens and the earth, and He knows everything you conceal and everything you declare. God is fully aware of the innermost thoughts, right? So that is something really profound if you really think about it, because He knows even the innermost of our thoughts. Like a lot of our thoughts we might have in our subconscious, but we might not even know about it until we think about it, and we follow it closely, and then we come to realization, oh, this is really the main reason why I'm doing all these things, because these are minor convictions, right? But God already knows everything, and He knows a lot of things that we say, but He also knows those things that we don't say, or we don't even acknowledge, or it doesn't even like come into your mind, but it's in there somewhere in the deep subconscious, right? But God knows these thoughts, and He holds us responsible for these innermost thoughts, and based on these thoughts, I mean, our paths are designed the way they are, based, and He knows the kind of people we are, whether the souls, are they wicked, or are they righteous. Verse 5. Have you noted those who disbelieved in the past? They suffered the consequences of their decision, then suffered the consequences of their decision. They incurred a painful retribution. This is because their messengers went to them with clear proofs, but they said, shall we follow humans like us? They disbelieved and turned away. God does not need them. God is in no need. Praiseworthy. So, I mean, this shows to us that, the human being is a human being, and he never changes. I mean, the nature of the human being is the same, even though like we progress through time, through many generations, and we might advance in so many other ways, but our inner nature of being who we are is the same. And humans are just you know people who have rejected God, and we are rebels, basically. So this is what they do. um, they disbelieve. So God says, have you noted those who disbelieved in the past and suffered the consequences of their decision? They incurred a painful retribution. I mean, and so when you think about that, talking about all the previous generations that that were annihilated because of the messengers that went to them with the clear proofs, but they did not believe those messengers simply because they said, by excuses that they make, was that, why should we follow someone who's a human being? And when you think about it, like, I never thought that really this is how, I mean, when I think about it, I mean, in the context of when I read these verses in the past, like, my idea was just, okay, it's like people, messengers come and they just outright reject the messenger. But there's a lot of people who don't do that. I mean, who might accept, uh, on the surface, but they have doubts inside, and they they disbelieve really. But then what's causing those doubts is, I mean, the fact that I mean, they focus on the human nature also of the messenger, and the fact that this person's a human being, and we can see that very clearly, like when people, for example, you tell them something from the message, and this is what the messenger brings. Obviously, that's the job of the messenger, is to deliver God's message, right? And the messenger comes and he brings some information from the Quran, and then the people disbelieve it very casually without even realizing what they're doing, and they will say that, well, this is because the messenger was just a human being, and this is, they acknowledge, a lot of them acknowledge that he was a messenger, but then they say that that's his personal opinion, and then I mean, they emphasize on the things that they can find in his life, the things that, the human factor, where, for example, like he may have done something or said something, not exactly related to the message, but it could be considered a mistake or something like that, and they would magnify and use that to create a confusion and to subvert the messenger, and to just downplay the whole messengership itself, and the fact that, to just basically to deter people from following the messenger. And so really, a lot of these people will focus on the human aspect of the messenger, and a lot of people will tell you that, you're idolizing the messenger by listening to him. He's just a human being, just read the Quran and, not listen to him. So, like, they use all kinds of tricks, but really, I mean, this is the thing that you see here. I mean, it's not something new. People have done that. For example, with Moses, they said he's a magician, and with Jesus, and all of these other messengers in the past that came, they never believed them. And time and time again, it's God's system. He sends the messengers. Once people are tested, and they fail, eventually God's retribution comes and they're annihilated. Now that is not something we can, like, ignore, because, I mean, this is God's system. So, I mean, if it happens today in this day and age, I mean, we have to acknowledge the fact that, this is God's system and He's created that. And He's saying in the Quran that this is His system. So you cannot say, for example, that, well, this is just because, you know, like, just blame it on worldly, scenarios. Like, I mean, it could very well be a conspiracy, or it could be something, like, somebody's negligence or something, or, some world, there must always be some kind of worldly explanation to it, or they probably won't be, but we have to know that everything that happens in this world is by God's leave. And if you don't follow God's laws, you're out of God's protection, and then, eventually, the final disaster, the final blow comes, and the final blow is the worst, obviously, and it ends up in the person's, leaving this world and being annihilated, right? I mean, death itself is not a disaster, but a misery that, comes, like what happened to these people. They, at the end of their lifetime, they got inflicted by some sort of a natural disaster on the surface, or something like that, right? That appeared to be a natural disaster, like flood, or earthquakes and things like that, or storms, windstorms, and all these things. But then, they were annihilated based off of that, and this is what God talks about in the Quran very openly. So there's no ambiguity here. that these things are a result of what people do, and then eventually, when their time comes, they're annihilated. Now, we all know that in this day and age, I mean, not entire communities will need to be annihilated because there's different people among them, and there could be people that need to be saved and would not be disbelievers and all that. So, we have these selective ways through which this happens. God picks and chooses, who has to be annihilated at what point, and we have these diseases like, AIDS and cancer and all these viruses that we know of, like COVID-19 and all these other things that are created for this very reason. It's part of God's system, obviously. So we have to acknowledge that. Um, and It says in verse 7, well, verse 6, it says that they disbelieved and turned away. God does not need them. God doesn't no need praiseworthy. So God does not need anybody, anything. I mean, He is omnipotent. He's omniscient. He's sovereign in every way, right? So He does not depend on anybody or anything. But He's still. It's out of His mercy that He's giving us this guidance. Like a loving parent or something like that you could relate to, right? Where He's constantly trying to help us, even though He's allowing us to be tested, but He's trying to help us because He wants us to make the right choice. But I mean, it's just the humans are so bad that they are inherently going for the wrong things because of what they are, because a lot of the souls don't deserve to be saved, and they're going towards the bad stuff. They insist on going to hell. They strive uh, on going to hell, so they strive to go to hell. So, but God, as far as God is concerned, He doesn't want a single person to go to hell, and He doesn't put a single soul to hell. The humans will go to hell on their own volition on the day of judgment because they will not be able to withstand God's physical presence if they haven't grown their souls enough, you know, to on the day of judgment. And how do we do that? I mean, of course, we have to do what God says in this Quran. That's why God has revealed the Quran, and He has sent messengers from time to time for us to be able to, uh, you know, um, help ourselves and to be able to redeem ourselves, so we can grow our souls. I mean, this time is very precious, and this is why we're being reminded in this surah about the day of judgment. I mean, the title of the surah is called mutual blaming, and we'll see why as I read these verses. Verse 7, it says, "Those who disbelieved claim that they will not be resurrected. Yes, indeed, by my Lord, you will be resurrected, and you will be held accountable for everything you have done. This is easy for God to do. Therefore, you shall believe in God and His messenger and the light that we have revealed herein. God is fully cognizant of everything you do. The day will come when He summons you to the day of summoning. That is the day of mutual blaming. Anyone who believes in God and leads a righteous life, He will remit his sins and will admit him into gardens with flowing streams. They abide therein forever. This is the greatest triumph. As for those who disbelieve and reject our revelations, they are the dwellers of the hellfire. They abide therein forever. What a miserable destiny." So, the title of this surah is mutual blaming because that's the day that, you know, the disbelievers will be mutually blaming one another when people will be resurrected. We know that this world cannot possibly continue forever as we know it. Anyways, it has a finite, uh, lifespan. But based on the Quran, we know the world would end in less than 300 years now from now. And so when that happens, God says that that is the day of mutual blaming. And so everybody who is in hell will be blaming each other for, for them being in hell, rather than blaming themselves, actually, because this is what brought them to hell is themselves. Um, but God says, anybody who believes and leads a righteous life, He will remit his sins, and He'll admit him into gardens with flowing streams. Now, these are allegorical verses, but we can imagine that nobody would uh, not like to own a garden with like flowing streams and waterfalls and things like that. Obviously, it represents a very peaceful and relaxing and luxurious type of a setting which everybody would want, as compared to, being in a place of constant, torment and, just misery, fire, and I mean, hell is a terrible, terrible place, right? But comparing that to the life of paradise, obviously, it's gardens and streams and rivers of unpolluted water and anything that you wish, meats of birds and anything just you can possibly imagine. Heaven is many, many times more beautiful and awesome than you can ever imagine. And so God says they abide therein forever. And if you think about it, I mean, in this world, I mean, we work so hard to try to, make a living, go to school and go to work tirelessly, spend, most of our lives doing what we can so that we can have, uh, like, I don't know, 20 years or 30 years in a home, then we'll probably die anyways, as far as this world is concerned. So you can never really get any satisfaction out of it. I mean, this life is so short. It just passes you by before you even know it, and you're spending all this time running after something that by the time you're not even there, it's going to be over. So it's like running after an illusion, running after a mirage, and you get there, there's nothing there. So what are people doing in this world? I mean, it's just a very temporary. This worldly life, as we know, is nil compared to the hereafter, right? But what we really should be striving for is what's going to be eternal and what's real, and then that is our hereafter. But obviously, not everybody is able to understand that and believe that, but those who do, and those who are certain about it, those are the only people that will actually make it. And that's why these surahs, especially towards the end of the Quran, are just consistently reminding us repeatedly about the day of judgment, the consequences, what's going to happen, so that our vision is clear, and we're not distracted by the worldly illusions that we are surrounded by as part of our test. So, God willing, I'll read verse 11. Divine law. Nothing happens to you except in accordance with God's will. Anyone who believes in God, he will guide his heart. God is fully aware of all things. You shall obey God and you shall obey the messenger. If you turn away, then the sole mission of our messenger is to deliver the message. God, there is no other God besides him. In God the believers shall trust. Okay, so God's divine law, as it states in the subtitle, is that, nothing happens to us except in accordance with God's will. So anything that happens to us in this world um, is something that is, approved by God. So, in other words, if you're supposed to get sick or you're supposed to get even a scratch, it's in accordance with God's will. Obviously, you're not even going to get that scratch if you don't deserve it. And if you're doing everything you can to lead a righteous life, I mean, God will protect you from even getting a scratch, and you're going to have total protection once you're a proven worshiper of God alone, and once you're tested through, the good and the bad, and all kinds of situations in your life, to see you worship God alone in all circumstances. You'll be in complete protection, and you'll have a perfect life with no problems whatsoever. But if something is to happen to you, I mean, anything bad is to happen to you, that is going to be in accordance with God's will. I mean, if, Satan hates us, right? Especially the people who are striving hard to worship God alone. I mean, he's just looking for an opportunity to smite them and hurt them. And he hates their guts. I mean, more than I can describe it. I mean, God says in the Quran, He's your most ardent enemy. And not very many people will actually acknowledge that, but this is the reality. So, and we can see that by looking at the track record of how Satan gets to people. There's people that are supposed to be very close to the message, and they will be striving really hard, and at some point, these people, Satan grabs them, and they're clueless. They think that they're going on the right path, but actually they fall for some kind of trap, and then they just keep going until their life ends in some kind of disaster, and then it's over. So we have to acknowledge that. I mean, this is something that I don't even think that most people fully understand how hard this test is. I mean, people become submitters and they think that they just have to do the bare minimum and just do their salat and zakat and just live like these I don't know how to say it, but live like these casual submitters, I would say, and everything will be fine. But they don't realize, we don't realize, I mean, how difficult this test is and how we're being tested. I mean, this is not an easy test, and it just really reflects on the ignorant nature that we showed uh, in the heavenly society when we decided to take the test. We thought that, yeah, of course, this is simple. Yeah, we're going to do that. We're going to worship God. We're not going to set up any idols, and we'll follow, whatever God sends. And this is what we thought. We really underestimated the test, and we overestimated our intelligence. So we were ignorant and we were arrogant with our egos. We thought that we know so much and we're so smart that we'll make the right decision. But the test is obviously really, really like God has, it's a very exacting test. So we're tested to the um, full extent of our abilities. It's so it's not like you go and take the test for like kindergarten or something where you're like a somebody who has an IQ of like a scientist or something, and you're given a test like for a fourth grader or something like that, right? Even it's not like that. God knows our capacity, and we're tested to that very capacity. And so if you think that, yeah, it's going to be easy, I'll do it. If you don't take it very, very seriously, it's very obvious that it's very likely that you're going to mess up, by just being careless and reckless, and making choices and taking them lightly. And that's what humans do. We break God's law, we transgress, and we think that it's no big deal. But obviously, as far as God is concerned, it's a very big deal. And I mean, although God is so forgiving and kind and merciful, I mean, obviously, He has a system in place that is a fair system that God has put in place, and Satan plays by those rules. And so, when you break God's laws, I mean, Satan, being a crybaby, will come and try to get you off the path and claim you as a person that could be, possessed by Satan. And once that happens, your test, I mean, your life as we know it, I mean, your eternal life, I mean, it's doomed. Right? It's very scary. I mean, just to put things in perspective, right? I mean, an example that I like from we know from the Measure of the Covenant is that of someone saying, I have probably said it multiple times, but I'll mention it again, is someone saying, something happens, say, oh geez, I totally forgot I had to go to the grocery store or something, right? And Satan is such a crybaby. He's even looking for those little things, and he'll make a claim against you to say that this person is worshiping, commemorating Jesus, and God will grant him that claim, if you can imagine. I mean, you have no intention of worshiping Jesus or commemorating Jesus, but because by action, that's exactly what you're doing. Satan makes the claim and he gets it, right? I mean, our intentions will matter, for example, on things where, you're doing something righteous, It's a matter of your intention, whether you did it for God or some other worldly benefit, for example, or for show off, right? That's a debatable thing. But let's say you did something that's inherently bad, well, at that point, it's not about, well, my intention was good and this and that, So Satan makes a claim, boom, he gets it, right? Let's say you wanted to steal some money so you could help a poor person. Well, you did something wrong. You stole money, so Satan will make a claim at you, whether you did it for a good reason or not. Um, so unless you're, forced by circumstances that you couldn't help, like your life was in danger or something like that, you're going to be held responsible for it. And so that's just to give us an idea of how tough this is, right? I mean, so we can't take these things lightly, because of what is at stake. And this is God's law that, we have to obey God and we have to obey the messenger. We don't have, it's not a choice, it's a commandment that we have to do this. And I mean, the messenger's job, as we know it, is to just deliver the message. His job is not to convince us, and his job is, I mean, obviously God sends proofs for the messenger to convince, to reassure our hearts and stuff like that. But as far as the messenger himself is concerned, I mean, he's supposed to give us the instructions, and then it's up to us to follow them, right? It's not his job to make sure that we follow them. It's our job to make sure that we follow those things. So we have to be vigilant about how we do it. And as it says in verse 13, God, there is no God besides him, and God the believers shall trust. So we have to trust in God, and we have to trust in the fact that also that, God is the one who sends the messengers, and if we obey God and we obey the messenger, we're obeying God, and he's going to help us, and he will help us. But many people don't do that, right? I mean, the reason why this is telling us that is that, people have more trust in other things besides God, and they worship other entities besides God by doing so, and they expose, the vulnerability that allows them to get snatched by Satan. And it's a reality, of course. So, we have to, really be careful about that. Now, God will now continue to read more. Verse 14 says, "O you who believe, your spouses and your children can be your enemies. Beware. If you pardon, forget, and forgive, then God is forgiver, most merciful. Your money and children are a test, and God possesses a great recompense. Therefore, you shall reverence God as much as you can, and listen and obey, and give to charity for your own good. Anyone who's protected from his own stinginess, these are the successful ones. If you lend God a loan of righteousness, he will multiply the reward for you manifold, and forgive you. God is appreciative, clement, the knower of all secrets and declarations, the Almighty, most wise." So we are told in verse 14 that our spouses and our children can be our enemies as well. And how can they be our enemies? I mean, one way that they could be our enemies is when we idolize them, right? I mean, you having spouse and children, and money and these things, these are tests from God, right? I mean, we can appreciate God for giving us these things, and acknowledge them and in our lives in the manner that God has made them, right? But what happens is people end up idolizing money or business or spouses or children or relatives over God or whatever it is, anything that, or themselves for that matter, right? So anything that occupies our mind most of the day, whether it's our spouses or our children or businesses or ourselves, I mean, can be our gods. And that's could be our enemies, because that's what it takes to lead us to hell, so we destroy ourselves, right, that way. So that's how they can be our enemies. So what we need to do is to make God our gods, make God our God most of the day, which means uh, at least 51% of our time has to be spent in thinking about God, and God being our focus, right? And it's not easy, right? Because yeah, all of these distractions are there. So, for us to be distracted. And so, if you don't observe God's commandments by, doing your contact prayers, by giving to charity, by commemorating God, glorifying Him, being mindful of all His blessings, things like that, obviously, God's not going to be your God, and you're going to be doomed. Um, and so, and in all of that, I mean, we have other laws that, we have to remember. For example, if your child or your relatives, are fighting you because of religion, I mean, that could be another place where, they could be inviting you to hell, and you have to make a choice between them and God, and so they could be your enemies in that sense as well, because they would be inviting you to hell. And so if you choose them over God, really, I mean, that would mean that, they are your enemies in that sense as well. So that's why it says, therefore you shall reverence God as much as you can. So this is the sorry, this is the conclusion of all of this, is that we should reverence God as much as we can and listen and obey. So, we have to reverence God as much as we can and listen and obey. I mean, it's very easy to God has, they say, like, God has given us 2 years and one tongue. So this is 2 years are there, so ears are there, so you can listen, and you can obey. uh, but a lot of time people just want to follow their own opinion, and they want to impose their own opinion on others, and what's inside their heads is what matters the most, not what they should be doing or what they should be believing. And that's obviously, something that people need to think about, and obviously to give to charity. Money is something that, people have to, people have to acknowledge that, they should love God more than money. People can become really stingy when it comes to money, and part of it is like human nature, but we have to overcome that by giving to charity. And one of the things that charity does is it assures us about the hereafter, because it's something you have invested in. Like, you're emotionally investing into it, so it should remind you that, yes, I'm giving this money, but this money is not going to go to waste, because there's the hereafter coming. So it's a reminder for us, a constant reminder when we give to charity, that why this money is going where it's going, because the hereafter is real. And so it's a form of worship, and it's going to give us certainty. And obviously the fact that, this charity will go to help other people, or it's going to go in the cause of God. And it's going to be, something that would be important for our soul growth. And then it says, if you lend God a loan of righteousness, He will multiply the reward for you manifold and forgive you. So, I mean, when we do these things, these things wipe out our sins, and help us, you know uh, put money in our post-retirement account that has a return on investment greater than any program that you can find in this world, where it's like eternal, and you get to become like the king of world 10 times more beautiful and expensive. I mean, there's no comparison, right? And it's forever, right? So there's really literally no comparison, like decent comparison, that than one could provide on a return on investment, mm, on something that you're spending towards for the hereafter, in worldly terms. But yeah, so I mean, this is a reminder for us, and God says it says God is appreciative, clement. I mean, these are all attributes of God that we can use to acknowledge God and remember God, and know God, because believing in God is also believing in God's qualities. And when it says God is appreciative, it means that, He's not going to He's reassuring us that He's not going to let our efforts go to waste. If we spend in the cause of God, whether it's money or time, whatever way, we are spending in the cause of God, God's going to be appreciative of that. He's not going to overlook your efforts. So it's not for no reason. It's not in vain. it's something that's going to be counted, and God appreciates that. He's clement, he's kind, he's not cruel to just wipe it out, except unless we commit idol worship, right? So we have to be extremely careful about that. And it says God is the knower of all secrets and declarations. He's the Almighty, most wise. Uh, so again, as I said, He knows everything that you and I are up to. He's with us now. He's listening to everything you and I are saying. He knows what you're thinking, and not only that, I mean, He knows everything everyone is thinking, whether it's human or not. And not only that, He knows from the very beginning till the very end in this world for everybody, and for every creature that's to come all the way for eternity. So that's something that we can't even get our heads around. That's how great God is. So with that, I think I will end and let you guys share any comments or questions. Thank you.
Masha Allah, praise God for a good study.
Thank you.
I have a question. Would you shed a little more light on that part of the verse of 14 that if you pardon, forget, and forgive, then God is forgiver? I always get confused by that verse, part of the verse.
Right. I mean, yeah, I mean, it could also be uh like in other ways, where your spouses and children can be like your enemies in the real sense. For example, they could be disbelieving, and in that sense, they could be your enemies as well. Um, so under any circumstance, if you pardon, forget, and forgive, I mean, that is important, for your own self, for your own sanity as well. So we have to not only we have to pardon, which is one thing, right? Just to not hold it against the person, and you have to forget and forgive, not just forgive or not just forget, right? I mean, sometimes like people will people will forgive, but they will not forget, or sometimes people will forget, but they will not forgive. So they're it kind of goes hand in hand. I think that's just applies in general, with any any sort of a situation where you have to forgive and forget. I mean, when it comes to like any sort of a dispute that you'd have with someone, or when God says patience and forgiveness reflects the true strength of character, right? So, I mean, imagine if you have people in your life that are constantly, inviting you to hell. They could be provoking you, for example, into just doing things that are against God, or maybe causing you to object, or grieve and things like that. So I mean, for you to be able to stay calm and remember God, and just live a peaceful life. I mean, you have to do this, in order to keep on the path. I mean, of course, like, I mean, if they're your religious enemies, um doesn't mean that you have to be like, you know kind towards them and be nice to them and all that kind of stuff, right? But it doesn't even talk about whether they're your religious enemies or not. It just says, if they can be your enemies. If they are your enemies, if you pardon, forget, and forgive, then God is forgiver, most merciful. So I mean, God will forgive, um you as well, because you're doing something that's righteous by, believing in God and exercising your patience and forgiveness, and you're following God, right? So God knows that you're doing these things, so God will forgive more of your sins that way. And that's how I see it.
Yeah, Masha Allah. Thank you. I can understand as we go learn. When we're like little, we see brothers and sisters. We think that these are the closer relationships. But then when you grow older and you get married, then we realize that no, your spouse is more closer. You share everything with your spouse, and this, I guess, this is one relationship that even though your parents are have more rights and your blood relation, but I guess a spouse and a husband and wife is the most closest, and you live long life with each other, and it's just to think that that person that you are so close to can be your enemy. I mean, this is one thing that God is warning us, because with so much love and closeness, they can slowly make you go in the wrong path. It's not a immediate impact. It will tell you do this and you go, and the slowly you're living, because this is the company you hang out with day and night. You spend most of your time with your spouse, and if they're idol worship, that's why God said you not to marry idol worshiper. And a believing person, even though this person is a slave or a very poor person, is far better than a disbelieving person who is very rich. God gives us examples like that, because this person is going to drag you to hell. And if your spouse is, I mean, you're already married, or your spouse is not a good believer, then this is a red flag. I mean, slowly, you can cause you to harm. Mashallah, thank you.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's pretty scary to read this where mutual blaming. Uh, sometimes you are going strong in submission, everything is fine, and after sometime after days, you realize you're lacking behind. Something is missing. Sometimes you don't feel that energy. It's pretty scary. Then you grab yourself and then you say, "Oh, I got to do something. I got to re-energize my battery." It's something. I
Mhm.
mean, we get so lost in this world. I mean, all these things in nowadays, especially with technology, and everything's right on your fingertips. I mean, time. It's like this. All technology is stealing our time, the most valuable assets. You sit down in front of a TV or something, and 2 3 hours pass by, and you just, oh my God! I mean, I didn't even watch anything, and then it's pretty scary how it's like a quicksand. It's just sucking us into this. MashaAllah, thank you.
So,
I want to comment here, MashaAllah. I think this is verse
mhm.
number 17, as we should call it. And God says, if you lend God a loan of righteousness, He will multiply and for reward for you manifold and forgive you. God is appreciative element. I mean, when you receive all the lending, you lend someone money or lend something to someone, and that person, like you invest in the bank or in the company. This company needs money. They will invest further, or they will do things, and they will pay you. This company does need money. I mean, when you think about it, God is asking you and me and everyone that to lend God a loan. Imagine the words that God is using are righteousness. Though God does not, he's not. I mean, he doesn't need any praises. He's praiseworthy. I mean, the righteousness. He doesn't need our righteousness. He has everything. He owns it basically everything. He's the one that created everything. But he's asking us that to invest with God with righteousness. I mean, just imagine. I mean, he's offering us. to invest with Him. I mean, this is just the way the words God is using. It's just, God could have just said that, just be righteous, and then I'll be blessed. Then I mean, God's using a word like, someone comes to you and try to sell you something and try to convince you, come on, invest with our company. We will do this for you. We'll show you all the
Mm-hmm.
numbers and everything. God is coming down to that level, to a human being. To
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it shows sort of,
SubhanAllah.
Subhanallah. I mean, God is showing a downside of His. I mean, He doesn't need to. If He's coming down to our, I would say stuff to our human level, but coming down lower and lower to the people that to convince us. Come on, you wanna give me a loan of righteousness, and I will give you, multiply you so much
Mm-hmm.
more. God, that's where you start understanding the. God says that the veils upon veils on their mind, where it's like someone in the deep sea and total darkness. That if they put their hands in front of them, they can't even see their hand. It's kind of that kind of darkness that God is talking about. That these people will not be able to see if you have gone to that point already. It's too late for you. I mean, when you're, I've seen a quicksand. If somebody's too deep in there, it's beyond repair. You cannot even get them out anymore. I mean, if somebody's almost like, if somebody's leg is in this quicksand, maybe you can pull that person out. But somebody's already deep inside, there's no more
Mm-hmm.
hope left for that person.
Yeah.
These are the example that God showed us. I think YouTube is still running, right?
Yeah, actually it stopped before I just noticed, so I restarted it. Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah. Yeah. Usually it ends at 1 hour, and today ended at 51 minutes. That's why I was a little thrown off.
again, it's really stressing this verse that number one is glorifying God is everything in the heaven and everything on earth. Honestly, if anybody wants to take a hint on that, it's a hint from God, which we discussed in the last sermon, the last class study, is that absolutely hard to rejoice when remembering God. And there's like, suppose there's a resort, beautiful resort. It's open 24 hours a day, and people are having fun. There's so many millions of activities and so many things going on, and people are just tirelessly having fun. They don't get tired, and they're enjoying and enjoying and enjoying. And God is telling me there is a place that exists on this earth, and all these my creatures are enjoying it. Why don't you go, people? Enjoy, join these people. You will have so much fun. This is actually God is giving us a clue. There's so much happiness in remembering God that you will absolutely be happy in that. Remembering God is just that one of the heaven that God is talking about right on earth. And it's just not something that you say, oh, maybe it's a fairy land or it's a fairy talk. This is, in fact, a truth. And 23 places God will say that your happiness starts right here on earth.
Inshallah. Yeah. Yeah. Heaven and hell start here, you know.
Yeah, both. And if you ever ponder about the verse number two, that He's the one created you. I mean, I'm not even talking about the body, not even talking about the being born or you're creating from a cell. If you really sit down and ponder upon the original creation of your soul, that it's sometimes you like you will have to probably meditate on that and just think about it alone and thinking about who you really are. I mean how your soul came into existence, your mind, yourself. This is a very deep thought that you may grasp that idea that how even you, I mean God has created you, your mind. Who were you before that? How God thought of a human being with you, your mind, your intellect, your when you have fun, you enjoy. That's something that is having fun. who is that person? That you yourself. How God has created that initial your thought, your concept. And that's just one individual. There's billions upon billions of human beings, and then trillions upon trillions of other creatures. And this is how you may realize that how awesome God is, that He has created all that. So when you even ponder upon your own self, that who you are, how God has created you, I mean, in itself, for a while you may have a thought that is it even possible to even for a second your mind might think that is it even possible for God to do it, but then your mind will back you up that God is omnipotent, He can do anything. So in that time, then you will appreciate God even more. That thank you for creating me, that I came into existence now, and I'm in your world, and I enjoy the food, and I enjoy the music, I enjoy life, all these things that I'm enjoying. It's part of because you have created me. If you had not created my soul, I would never have existed at all. All your creations would be running around and enjoying and praising and having fun, and I would never be there if you had not created my soul. This is a very one of the things that we should be ponder upon.
Mhm. Okay, anybody else has any comments or questions? Any off-topic questions? If not, then God willing, maybe we can conclude the study. So, thank you all for joining us. God willing, our next study is going to be on Tuesday at 2 p.m. Pacific time, and I think our teacher might be Nugrat. God bless you all. Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu
So
alaikum, everyone. Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum.